We will call the regular meeting of the county board to order. We will stand for a moment for the Pledge of Allegiance. Moment of silence.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Roll call.
One supervisor absent, supervisor support.
Okay. All righty. Welcome back, Charlotte and Tom.
Thank you.
Good to see you.
We'll work together.
Okay. Move on to approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Members of the public wishing to be heard. Members will have 5 minutes. I have Josh, is it Conley? Conry? Okay, if you want to come up here, you can speak.
This is in regards to the closer of the shooting range.
Okay.
From what I've read, granted, I'm not a part of the investigation, but from what I've read, it sounds like there were some bullet holes found in a shed, combine, what have you, south of the shooting range. Has there been any conclusive evidence that those bullets came from the shooting range itself?
This is not a question and answer thing right now, so we will have a report here coming up shortly that might answer that. So, but your concerns then are?
So my concern is that it seems like it was disclosed on a whim, and I and many others, I mean, we paid good money to use that. That's part of our recreation, you know, and from everything I've heard so far, it sounds like this thing was closed on a whim without any evidence that the bullets fired actually came from the shooting range. That seems a little silly to me. You know, I want to see this thing open back up as soon as possible. I've been there multiple times last year. There was nobody but my fellow shooters there. Nobody but the people actually using the range. No, you know, no nannies watching over us, as it were. We managed ourselves. Everything went great. I don't want that to change. I don't want to see a bunch of, you know, I don't want to see a bunch of range safety officers and all this nonsense. That's a spurious term. It's just nannies that they don't do anything useful. Sit there and give you a bunch of rules that everyone there already knows. So I would like to see this thing open up as soon as possible with as few restrictions as possible.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. And who is that? Don't know. Okay.
Lindsay Brand.
There's someone in the. You made the top. Yeah. You can go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry, I know we're past the limit.
Okay. Right here, Lindsay.
Past the limit, yes, I am.
Okay. And you have 5 minutes.
As I said when I was walking in, I only see a few of you who are following the recommendations for public health on the federal, state, and county level. No one in here is observing the capacity, and that's disrespectful. According to the CDC director, our response has been an embarrassment and a tragedy. as well as a detailed map of our weaknesses. You all have shown your weaknesses. You have turned our Department of Public Health into an ineffective laughingstock by refusing to hold the community or yourselves accountable. Through negligence and partisan politics, you have made every effort to avoid or relinquish your responsibility to the health and safety of this community. Your inaction and cheap excuses are disgusting. It isn't your responsibility. It isn't. I've heard that a lot recently. That's not my problem, it's somebody else's. Everything comes back to the county. That's you guys. If it isn't your responsibility, then what are you doing here? Let someone who's actually going to do something come in here. Until you wake up, what are we supposed to do in the public? Right now, you are all putting me at risk by ignoring the recommendations of your own health department. Every single death from this pandemic has been unnecessary and avoidable. Yet here we find ourselves facing another winter with little to no protection from the coming storms. You would think that in a year and a half, you all could have put your noggins together and come up with something. You could have started a science literacy initiative because this community is obviously sorely lacking in that department. Instead, you have allowed ignorance to spread faster than wildfire, and certainly are yourselves guilty of spreading conspiracy theory as if it were fact. Every single death from this pandemic has been unnecessary and avoidable. You have allowed ignorance to spread unchecked, and now this same will happen with the highly transmissible variants. Doesn't matter if you're vaccinated. You do not make any effort to enforce or hold anyone accountable, especially yourselves, as evidenced this evening in this room here. If you would take the moment to look around at the super spreader you guys could be creating right now out of negligence and ignorance. Why? Why do you not hold anyone accountable? Because it's bad for business. All the while, it gets harder and harder to trace between bad faith measures and reluctance to downright refusal to acknowledge. People go to their deathbeds saying they don't have COVID because of people like you guys who spread this ignorance. Your inaction is a bad precedent. Your inaction puts us all at risk. Your inaction has no excuse. How many unnecessary and avoidable deaths do you require before you will take action? How many unnecessary and avoidable deaths before you guys all wake up and acknowledge your role and responsibility in this? Or is it the death of a child that you require? A sacrifice? To what? Do you need more than one? How many children do you require to die before you do something? 3 have died so far in Wisconsin. Yet people smirk. It's obvious, really. It comes down to money. That's all that anybody cares about here, is building bigger and bigger and better. You can't take a break off that for 5 minutes to take care of the community.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time is up.
Our state motto is forward, not backwards, not dead. And if a child dies,
Thank you. Your time is up. Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on consent agenda? Then, hearing none, I will call for the voice vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes. Reports.
Good evening, everyone. I'll kind of be your MC for this report. We put together a memo that was in your packet. I believe it's on page 21, and it kind of goes through the reports you're going to receive tonight. So the first one we'll start out with is from Larry Ritzinger, our Facility and Parks Division Director. And then the Sheriff's Office is here, Lieutenant Rick Stark. And then I have MT2 Firearm Range Evaluator Dave Andrews on the line, and he'll give his presentation that Tracy will help him kind of scroll through. And then the last one, number D, Larry's going to come back up. He put together some pros and cons that the committee looked over, Facility and Parks Committee. So you can give, the Facility and Parks Committee really are looking for your insight on these. If you see any additional pros or cons, you see any other additional options that are on there. And then I think any feedback, they're really looking for your feedback. The idea would be we'd take this back to Facilities and Parks. They would bring back a recommendation to the full county board when we get that done. So we can start out right now with Larry.
Good evening. So we're going to give you a summary of the incidents that happened at the range. And we'll start off with September 20th in 2020. There's a complaint filed with Chippewa County Sheriff's Department regarding a pole shed being impacted by a number of bullets. The pole shed is located about 9/10 of a mile directly south of the range. Deputy Sperry responded to the initial complaint of the property damage. The Sheriff's Department's investigation found 7 bullet holes located on the north side of the pole shed. 1 bullet hole was located on the south side of the pole shed. 1 bullet hole was located in a combine inside the pole shed, and 2 bullet holes were located in some cabinets that were stored within that pole shed. From there, the public firearms range was closed on September 11th to everyone. Shut it down. September 22nd, the Facilities and Parks Committee met, discussed, and approved a plan to reopen the firearms range. The following safety enhancements were implemented prior to the reopening and included the installation of 10 cameras, installation of numerous signs stating, a few of them stating no guns beyond this point, firing line, and surveillance cameras in use. And I think there was probably 1 or 2 more put up. So a total of maybe 15 signs were added out there at that time. And modifications to the eyebrow limitation board at the long gun range was also completed, which prevented folks from, potentially firing over the berms, helped restrict the height in which they could shoot. With the changes complete, the range was reopened to all parties on October 9th, 2020. So at that point, we felt pretty good. Things seemed to be moving along pretty well. And then June 9th of 2021, the same party submitted another concern to the Chippewa County Sheriff's Department regarding more bullet holes in the same pole shed. Investigator Lau was assigned to investigate the complaint this time. So that investigation, Investigator Lau found that on dates 5/26, 5/28, and 6/2, there were some incidents noted by the complainants. An employee of the complainant, while working on a fence line on 5/26 at approximately 3:30 p.m., heard 2 to 3 bullets fly past. Two new bullet holes were located in the north side of the pole shed. The previous bullet holes were noted with blue tape on the pole shed, so they knew that these were new bullet holes as well. The wife of the complainant was doing some horse chores, and near the west end of the barn, heard bullets flying over the top of her head with approximate dates of 5/28 to 5/30. She was not completely sure which date, but within that date range. And a visitor to the same property was standing in the horse pasture on 6/2 at the east end of the barn and heard 3 bullets fly past their head. So kind of the summary of that is the Chippewa Sheriff's Department was able to determine that the bullets came from the direction of the range. They could not determine if the bullets came from the range itself. Video surveillance of the range was reviewed, and based on dates and times from the witnesses, subjects at the range were identified and interviewed, and it was clear that range rules were violated. Pretty clear on the cameras. So that was June 9th. On June 15th, the Facilities and Parks Committee discussed the firearms range at a meeting. They directed that the firearms range should remain closed to all parties in the next meeting, which was June 29th. The committee also wanted to see some recommendations come from the Public Firearms Range Advisory Committee. So on June 22nd, the advisory committee met and they forwarded the following recommendations to the Facilities and Parks Committee. The first one was to reopen the range only to hunter safety and law enforcement that have a range safety officer or state certified supervisor. And both of those groups always have that on site when they use the range. And they suggested that an ordinance be created that allows the range rules to be enforced by the Sheriff's Department. On June 29th, the Facilities and Parks Committee met and was provided with a summary of the investigation by the Chippewa County Sheriff's Department. They reviewed the recommendations from the advisory committee and put forth the following motions. One was to create an ordinance to uphold the firearms range rules. 2 was determine the fiscal impact of the installation of no blue sky baffles. This is a system that would prevent folks from shooting over the berm. It's a physical structure, so I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with that, but it's just a physical structure basically preventing that. And then the third motion was to open the firearms range to law enforcement and hunter safety education. On July 28th, the Facilities and Parks Committee met and was provided an update on the investigation by the Sheriff's Department. The Facilities and Parks Committee decided no further action will be taken until the independent firearms range evaluation was completed by MT2, was the consulting firm. On September 22nd, the Facilities and Parks Committee met and was provided with a report by Dave Andrews from MT2 regarding the independent evaluation. I provided a range operational options report that included some pros and cons, and the Facilities and Parks directed that the gate at the firearms range should be locked instead of using barricades. The following motion was put forth: to continue to allow hunter safety and law enforcement in Chippewa County to use the range, and no dynamic training will be allowed, only static training, static shooting. Assign the Facilities and Parks Division with calling neighbors anytime either of those parties were going to be shooting at the range. We were to call neighbors and make sure that they were informed, and continue to keep the firearms range closed to the public. That is the history of the incidents out there. I don't know if there's any questions. That's where we're at today. It's closed to the public and open to hunter's ed and static shooting for the Sheriff's Department.
So the individuals that were seen on camera violating the rules, was it because of lack of ordinance, there was no repercussions?
I can get into that.
Yeah, it's kind of beyond me and what they can follow up on. There are certainly range rules in place, and to utilize the range, you have to sign off that you've read the range rules, and they're posted in multiple locations, as well as online. So they're definitely available.
Supervisor Steele.
We put a motion in place to put an ordinance together, okay? But we was told that we should hold up on that by our corporate counsel. So we did. But it seems to the layman that if somebody's endangering the public by firing a weapon, then there's charges that could be made other than an ordinance endangering the public. So, was there a way to prosecute them? In my eyes, I thought there was. Now, I don't know if that was presented. I have no idea if that was presented to our district attorney. I don't know if that district attorney said, no, we don't have enough. I don't know. That wasn't part of the report. But I hope that answers your question.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Rick?
I'm Lieutenant Rick Stark from the Sheriff's Department, and barring repeating what Larry said, background of the complaint itself, initiated on June 9th this year. I'll just go right into the investigation that Investigator Lau conducted with some of the individuals that were on video shooting at the range. There were three separate incidences, separate occasions. The first witness was a farmhand that said, well, he was on the property in question, working on the west side of the property. Between 3:30 and 9 p.m., he heard 2 to 3 bullets fly past him. He described the bullets as being higher in the air. He did not hear gunshots in the area, and he did not hear anything strike the pole shed. The review of the video on 5/2, the day of the farmhand hearing this, at approximately 8:13, there was a adult male, seen shooting approximately 7 to 8 rounds with a rifle from his hip in front of the firing range line. So he was breaking the rules, standing in front of the firing line, shooting from the hip. The male was interviewed. He admitted to breaking the range rules. The male stated that it was fun to shoot from the hip. The male said he watched the bullets hit halfway up the burn. So he basically said he's seen his rounds hit the burn. The second incident, the witness said it was the owner of the property advised that she was feeding the horses on 5/28 between 5 p.m. and 7:30. She was standing on the east side of the barn and heard a bullet fly over her head. She described the bullet as a whistling sound. She did hear a gunshot from the north as well as other gunshots. A review of the video on 5:30 21 at approximately 7:56. A male was seen on video shooting a rifle with one hand rapidly with the muzzle pointed in the air with no muzzle control. The male was interviewed. He stated he was just messing around and couldn't believe how light the rifle was and how little recoil there was on the rifle. The third witness was the sister to the property owner. She advised that she was feeding horses on June 2nd of this year at approximately 7:20 p.m. and she heard 3 shots go by her head. And then she heard the thud of sounds, possibly bullets hitting the ground. She advised the horses became startled and took off running. Regards to the third witness on 6/2 at approximately 7:23 p.m., a female was at the range shooting with a rifle, aiming through the scope. She was behind the firing line inside the building, but she was afraid of the scope, so she didn't have her eye behind it. So she basically was sitting like this, not looking where she was pointing or aiming. She was interviewed and conducted with the female and stated that she was afraid of the recoil and didn't want to use the scope to hit her. those were the 3 incidents that were reported on the June 9th complaint. To answer your question about the district attorney's office, I did review this case with District Attorney Newell. We reviewed it, we discussed it. He thought it was appropriate to cite 2 of the 3 individuals for disorderly conduct, which is basically a catch-all, which is a county ordinance. But I did forward all the reports in that case to him for his review in detail, so he can see everything. He can see the video, he can see everything, and if he wishes to charge further, like you suggested, then he would do that. But I don't want to write county ordinance tickets if he's going to go that route. So right now, that's just kind of in his office, waiting for him to review. That's where we stand on this end of it.
Ready for questions, sir?
Yep.
Go ahead, Supervisor Steele.
Since that time, we've had another incident that your department started.
I'm not aware of another incident besides the original.
We had somebody remove the barricades on the road. And day or hours or day or 2 later, some people thought that the range was open. They even had a photograph that our committee saw of a woman standing down by the target, firing at the target, right close to it, and a gentleman back at the firing line firing at the target down here. That's why the committee decided to put gates up instead of barricades and padlock it. Now that to me was really a more serious offense than the other ones even, you know, I mean, talk about endangering people. So that happened. I couldn't give you the date. Maybe Randy knows.
Larry might.
I believe it's September 11th and 12th. I do have some pictures if you'd like to view.
That happened this September 12th. So there is another incident that happened after that.
Lee.
From the shed, were they able to retrieve anything that would indicate the caliber and type of weapon that was used?
No. The only thing they could measure, like the holes, and it was larger caliber.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Gary.
I don't know if you're the right person to ask, but I was just looking at these pictures, and maybe it's the next speaker, but why at a firing range would you use armor-piercing ammunition?
We would not in law enforcement. That ammunition is very hard to come by, and it's very expensive. I don't think the
And like
county
you,
administrator. I mean, we do have that for special occasions, like I'm a trained sniper, and we do have some rounds in a .308 that would do that for certain situations, but we very, very limited, and we don't use them.
Any other questions? I would have one for you, Rick. The time between the incidents and the complaints, did the complaints come in the same day that people witnessed these things, or was there a time?
It was a time frame. It was basically after they initiated the complaint, then investigator Lau went back and they were kind of guessing on times. There's one of these incidents where there was a couple days off that Brad went back and reviewed the video, and it was a couple days later than she thought it was.
Okay, so they had bullets whizzing by them and decided to wait a day or two before they called?
Yeah.
Brave souls. Yeah, thank you.
So next up will be Dave Andrews. He is from MT2. I'll let him do the introduction and kind of his company and what they do, but this is essentially what Dave does, goes around the country and does evaluations like this. So You have the presentation? It's up there. Okay, thank you. So Dave, you can take it from the top if you would.
All right. Thanks, Randy.
Yep.
Again, my name is Dave Andrews with MT2. We're a company that specializes in range evaluations, design, and construction. Myself, I've been involved in this particular realm since 2008. I've done an evaluation of about 1,000 ranges throughout the United States and in Canada, relative to both environmental and NRA guidance, design, and so forth. While MT2 was not specifically contracted to determine the source of the bullet holes, as part of our site evaluation, we did take a look at it relative to overshot potential, which is shooting over the eyebrow, the backstop, and the eyebrow, and to make a recommendation. And based on what we saw, we think there's a high probability the source of the bullet holes downrange probably came from the facility. That was based on, we reviewed 2 of the reports. The distance from the facility to the property is less than a mile, which is well within published range of most ammunition. There's a lack of overhead baffles to restrict the overshot, i.e. that is going over the backstop and the eyebrow that was put in. That eyebrow is sometimes called a bullet catcher. The idea being that when you're shooting into the backstop, sometimes you get ricochets, sometimes you do have errant shots above the targets, and so the purpose is to capture that. And the lack of overhead baffle, that is a structure that allows you not to shoot beyond the perimeter of the range. Because you don't have those, that also adds the potential for overshot. And there was also visual observation of direct fire bullets. And I think you've got the first picture up on, Randy, you have the picture up there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the first picture shows the top of the eyebrow in the rifle range. And they gave you some examples of things that I saw when I was there. Now, I will admit that, let me see, it was pouring rain, lightning, and blowing pretty heavily, so it was difficult to actually get up and take close pictures and evaluations, but you will see in these examples of what I'm talking about. Here is in red is direct fire bullet strikes, and I'll show you in the next picture how it actually pierced that I-beam. That's a steel I-beam holding up the eyebrow. The ones in white are example of direct fire bullet strikes, and the yellow ones are either ricochets that are coming off of the bullet stand or the target stands or some other mechanism to hit the eyebrow. If you go to the second picture, it's a blow up. And I wanted to show this because it is very dramatic. The circle on the right, the red, shows you 3 holes through this steel. And the circle on the left, there are at least 6 bullet holes of exactly the same thing. Now, it's one thing to have an accident. It's another thing when you start seeing clusters of bullet holes like this. Oftentimes, I've seen in a number of ranges where people like to hear the bullet hitting steel. And so instead of shooting at things like a paper target, they find that it's more enjoyable to shoot at things like either the vertical or the horizontal steel. And this is a good example of that. If you take a look at the next one, which is entitled Eyebrow Interior, near the top of the pistol range, you can see even there in the pistol range, you've got a couple of examples of direct fire bullet strikes. The next picture is of the pistol range. All right, it says roof over the firing line at the pistol range. And you can see the top of the eyebrow and this is just me standing there. So you can look and you can say, okay, now if I was shooting, you can just see the top of the impact area down at the bottom, that light brown. Then there's a green, that's, vegetation, and then you come to the eyebrow. If you look at the top of the roof, you'll see examples of some direct fire bullet strikes where there are misfires when they're either loading their gun or they're not holding the gun correctly, and they're allowing the pistol to rise as they're shooting. And so you can see that just from those 5 that I've shown there circled in white, that they were definitely going to be heading over the backstop. If you take a look at the next one, which is called exterior wall over the firing line at the rifle range, this is the vertical wall on the outside, and you see bullet holes that have been shot through, from behind the firing line. There's recently, and I'm not sure when you actually put this in, but you put in a reduced line of sight wooden structure that stops you'll have to hang 1 second. I apologize for that. Excuse me. So you can see where the shooter's bench. Hang on a second, please. Anyway, you can see where the shooter's bench is. The attempt to reduce the line of sight wooden structure that folds down, but you can still see the bullet holes in the wall above that. So, given that evidence, the police reports the closeness of the facility, the property downrange, there's a pretty good likelihood that the problem is coming from the facility. So there's a number of approaches that can be taken relative to eliminating potential of the overshot. Excuse me. So when you're doing an evaluation like this, there's 3 E's of safety that is looked at. There's education, engineering, and enforcement. The education is really something oriented towards hunter safety courses, as well as proper signage, especially letting people realize the things like the ranges of bullets and so forth. And the other is enforcement. You've talked about passing an ordinance. One of the things I think that would really help is, if you're going to keep this thing open, is that it's a severe fine and it's enforced. So, but the bulk of what we were to do was to actually take a look at it from an engineering standpoint. And realistically, the only alternative to this is to put in some no blue sky baffle systems as kind of the ultimate that you could do. The other alternative is the other end of the spectrum, and that is to close the facility. Now, if you close the facility, I just wanted to make sure that everybody understands that as soon as you close something, a range like this, you are now under federal regulations and state regulations to close according to those regulations. So it becomes a hazardous waste issue because you have lead there. And in doing a closure of a facility like this that has been in business or been used for as long as it has, there is likely to cost you as much to close it as it is to put in the baffle systems. It could range anywhere from $200,000-$300,000 to maybe $700,000, $800,000. So it is not a cheap fix. And in addition to that, one of the things you have to remember, it's not in this report per se, but that if you're going to close it and you close it according to the regulations, you're also going to end up having to even remove all the sideburns and the backstops. It's not just the 4 or 5 feet that are impacted by environment, but you're going to have to basically shut that whole facility down to be able to make sure that it isn't used improperly after closure. Kind of an interim measure is to actually have a range master or range supervision by a qualified person at the facility when people are actually shooting. What that does is it reduces the chance for people actually shooting at like that I-beam that we saw in the pictures. It does not mean that you will never have overshot, because there will be accidental misfires, there will be accidents that take place, no matter how much supervision you have and how much training. It just happens. So, you have, this becomes a risk management based issue and a decision, and that is, okay, it's going to reduce it significantly, but is that significantly enough? And that's a decision that the county has to make. There are a couple of items that you have to take into consideration, and one is the layout of the facility. The pistol range is significantly in front of the firing range of the rifle range. So you're either going to have 2 supervisors, or you're going to have to shut one range down while the other range is being supervised and just move back and forth. And there is a third alternative, and that is to look at a contracted concessionaire that will increase the entrance fees and so forth, but it does give you the option to have somebody else there besides a county employee. That has been used on, I wouldn't say a lot of ranges, but there are some, especially in things like park services and so forth. Like down Kentucky was one that we were working with that had concessionaires on 3 of their 6 ranges, I believe. So anyway, but the realistic alternative to not shutting this down is to install no blue sky baffle systems. The baffle systems are structures that are placed periodically downrange so that when a bullet is shot, there is no mechanism that will allow that shooter to shoot up into the air. It just reflects the bullet and pushes it down into the range floor. So one of the things we did is we took a look at your range relative to NRA guidance. There's a couple of things. One is that they recommend that you'd be at about 20 feet high backstop. You're pretty close to that. We don't have any topographic information, but I did a photographic analysis, and it looks like you're somewhere between 16 and 19 feet, 16 and 20 feet, something like that. So you're close to that. Certainly the side berms are typically thought to be only about 8 feet high, according to NRA guidance. But again, this is guidance, and you guys have got side berms 10 to 15 foot high. You don't see that very often, and I compliment you on the fact that you've got those that high, because it certainly precludes at least issues between the ranges and so forth. There is a picture in this draft report. You can see where on the right side of the rifle range, the eyebrow slopes down, and so there could be easily be shooting over the eyebrow, even though because it's only about 10 foot high at that point. So there's a couple of things that you need to take into evaluation. One is you need to make a decision on what the purpose of the range is if you're going to keep it open. Is it going to be civilian recreation? Is it going to be law enforcement, or is it going to be both? The reason we bring that up is because if it is civilian recreation, it is supposed to have the shooter stationary. That is, they are at the firing line and they stay at the firing line. Now, you've already heard one incident which said the guy decided to go out in front of the firing line. That is not unusual. People, either through ignorance or I guess it has to be ignorance, but they take it upon themselves to go off and do some very strange things, like shooting at the metal pieces, by moving from side to side and going in front and using other kinds of allowed illegal, let's call them illegal target systems. You know, I can't tell you the number of times that I'm at a range and I know that I'm going to find either one of two things: bowling pins or golf balls that are used for targets, and they will put them anywhere. There are a number of times I've been on ranges where they are shooting at trees above the backstops. We just finished doing one at Kaywood up in Wisconsin, where they were shooting at a tree that was 30 feet above the backstop. So it's nice to think that we're going to have shooters that know what they're doing, but they take a lot of lenience in how they actually act and how they use their guns. As I said, if you're in civilian mode, generally speaking, they're supposed to stay at the firing line. The targets are at the target line, and the targets actually move back and forth. For example, on the rifle range, you got target systems at 50 yards, 75 yards, and 100 yards, but the shooter stays at the firing line. In law enforcement, it's different. Law enforcement keeps the targets constant and moves the officers back and forth to meet certain training requirements. Because of that if you have a law enforcement orientation or use of this range, then you have to recognize that the shooters go back and forth. If the shooters go back and forth, that means you need more baffles to be able to provide that no blue sky alternative. The other component of law enforcement is if it is used as a tactical range. That is, not only are they moving back and forth or up and down range, they're moving laterally. and they may be having a police car there that they are shooting over or through, or those kind of situations are called tactical, and because of that, you have to end up having a much more a more costly design of your eyebrows because you have to have larger span. So there are two basic kinds of baffles, and I'll wrap this up real quickly here, but one is vertical baffles that's made of wood, that's filled with either gravel or granulated rubber, and those are recognized by NRA as appropriate. They're vertical as compared to inclined baffles, which are typically concrete and steel. And no matter what you've got, if you go through the report, you'll see that if you have on the rifle range, you may need about a half a dozen baffles. On a typical 25-yard range, you need probably four baffles, not including a baffle over the shooting pavilion. If you go into a tactical range, if you go into a law enforcement, you may end up having to have as many as a dozen baffles as compared to the 4 or 5 baffles if it is a non-law enforcement range. So I think the bottom line of this is that you've got some options to be able to handle the facility and be able to stop overshot. But you really need to have supervision, and you need to have some form of properly designed baffle system to restrict the overshot. Now, let me just say one thing about baffle systems. There's actually two things. One is you've got to recognize, put a baffle system in, you're going to have a change in the noise generated by the facility. Typically, when you put in a baffle system, it reflects the sound backwards. So instead of the sound either being dispersed generally, what you'll end up having is sound being reflected back to the north on this particular facility. So that's one thing to be in mind. The other is that if you have a baffle system and you stand between the baffle systems and you got some idiot there that decides that he's going to shoot up in the air, he can still shoot up in the air. If it's inclined and he goes down to the 25-yard line or the 3-yard line or whatever and looks up, there's going to be blue sky. They can shoot that way. Now, I have never seen that happen, but you have to recognize that even though we call it no blue sky, it is no blue sky from the shooter's perspective at the firing lines. So, and with that, I'll give this back to you, Randy. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you. I got a couple things I should address. First of all, you can see on the report it says draft. This part of the report is not going to change, but this is part of a larger report. Actually, Larry contacted this company a while back to look at doing lead mitigation. So as long as they were here, they're going to do that full report. So he pulled that out of that part of the report, and we'll get that whole thing. But this is really was the area, obviously, of concern right now, and the other stuff is really kind of managing the range and that sort of thing. So I just didn't want you to think that it's draft and it's not a final report. This part of it is final, but it'll be put into a larger report. We did get some cost estimates for baffles just along the rifle range side, and they're a little over $40,000 a piece. Talking to Dave, when I met him, he said that was probably on the low end, but he said, so that it's not cheap, obviously, having the baffles. And I guess that's all we have open for questions for Dave. Otherwise, Larry will come back up and finish the presentation.
Michelle?
The only facility that is available for our officers for shooting range.
Yeah, that I can't answer. I know there's facilities available. Does you have the answer for
Actually, we used the Chippewa Falls PD range today,
today? Okay.
but that's, to be honest with you, it's just a modified gravel pit,
That was my next question. Is it comparable?
you know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an expert and don't know the area very well, but there's other ranges around, but they're not standard, is what I've been told.
What we need for training. Thank you.
It sounds like no matter what we do, no blue sky or weather, there's still going to be supervision needed.
It's an option. Yep.
Any other questions? Ken?
What are the hours it's open, or typically was open before it's closed?
Larry's going to come back. Why don't you come back up, Larry?
The hours are basically 9 a.m. till dusk. I think it opened at 10 a.m. on Sundays. 7 days a week.
All year round?
All year round.
Mr. Hauser?
Is there insurance cost that's ever been calculated for having the facility? Liability wise?
I'm not aware of that.
I can answer that later. Wait till you finish up.
Another off
Carrie.
of what he asked, is the county responsible for like the holes in the shed and the combine and the other things that were shot because they came from our range, or is it the people on the cameras that have to pay the restitution, or is it, oh well, that's where you live, crap happens?
Well, I don't think it's been 100% confirmed that it came from the range.
Okay.
And the complainant has not asked for reimbursement that I'm aware of.
But could we in the future be reliable for something like that? Because it's our range?
I think if it was proven that the bullets came from the county range, I would defer that to legal, though I'm not legal.
And it would all depend on the circumstances and the facts. I think you'd have to take each circumstance into account.
You have something, Ken?
Not a question, but just a comment. And thank you, the Sheriff's Department, for your work that you've done on this. As asserted earlier in the evening, it was closed on a whim. It's obvious it was not closed on a whim. Thank you.
Was not.
Well done.
Ready to go with, okay, so we've got a few options to talk about, and there could be a few more, but these are just some that seemed obvious. So we're going to go ahead. There's 5 options. We'll talk a little bit about the pros and cons of each one and a little bit about the fiscal side of it. Mr. Andrews has mentioned some of them as well, so I apologize for any redundancy. The first option is to permanently close the facility to everyone. And of course, the pros of this is it eliminates any safety issues, and facilities and parks has less work. So it's always a positive thing, I think, unless we're looking for work, but not lately. The cons is it eliminates a valuable resource for the public. If you don't have this range available, where would the public shoot? Maybe in the county forest, I'm not sure, but that seems like a good alternate for a lot of people. Another con would be a negative impact on the law enforcement. The new location needed for training would probably require some travel and some costs associated with that. Talking with Chad Holm, he had contacted Fort McCoy, and I think the increase in their training per year would be $51,624. That's for 6 qualifying, what I understand. Another negative impact is on the Hunter's Ed. They would need a new location. With that, we'd also have a conflict with a grant requirement. We had received a grant 23 and a half years ago that said that the county would leave this open to Hunter's Ed for 5 years. That would expire, I believe, on June 29th, 2023. So there's a little bit of a gap there yet. And then, of course, the environmental site cleanup required. As you heard, Mr. Andrews, $200,000 or $300,000 up, to be determined. So with the first option, the existing budget, what we have today is we have a tax levy of $1,775, and the remaining is fees that we received from users, which was $16,655 in 2020, for a total budget of $18,430, and that's the budget out there. And again, very little tax levy. And the budget, we usually bring that in under. We're able to roll a little into a non-lapsing and move it forward to help complete projects along the way. Option 1. Move on to option 2. Option 2 would be to close the facility to the public only. So the pros, it would greatly minimize potential safety issues and county liability. The facility would be available for Hunter's Ed. The facility would be available for law enforcement. Both of those have range safety officers involved every time they shoot, so that adds a level of safety. And no additional range safety officers would be required. The cons, again, it eliminates that valuable resource for the public. Budget's pretty much the same operational budget. If it's open just to us, we still have to maintain it, so things change very little on that. The third option would be to sell or donate a firearms range to a local gun club or private party to manage or operate. So the pros again on that is it minimizes the potential safety issues and county liability. We could still make the arrangement so the range could be available for Hunter's Ed and law enforcement so many times per year or times per month, however we set up that arrangement. And the range safety officers would be required when the range was open to the public. We could work that in. And the gun club or private party would manage the range safety officers, manage and pay staff and so forth. There is a Menominee Gun Club, I believe it's called. I stopped in at their range, and they operate in this fashion today. Very nice range. They're in Menominee, but this is how they're set up. It's a gun club that, just as I described here. The cons on this option is we'd have to seek out a gun club or a private party that has interest in the opportunity. That would take some time and work, probably. The county would have to develop a memorandum of understanding or contract that would detail all the specifics of the agreement. Todd would probably get busy, or his group, I'm guessing. And the county would have to develop a migration plan, which may include an initial budget to rework or improve the firearms range to optimize safety. I mean, we may not want it operating without the baffle system. I don't know. Seems like it's pretty important from Mr. Andrews' report. So this, the budget is, who knows? You'd have to work all that out in the agreement. So it's really up in the air on that option. Option 4 would be to design and install the No Blue Sky baffle system. So this is the system without range safety officers, it's just the baffles. So the pros, again, would greatly minimize the potential safety issues, and we could potentially have the facility open to the public, law enforcement, and Hunter's Ed. The cons is the cost. So static use, if we do static use, we would need a total of about 10 baffles, and that would be between the pistol range and the long gun range. And the estimate that a consultant provided to us was $42,000 per baffle. So just with static use of the range, it'd be $420,000. If first the sheriff's department trains dynamically, so that wouldn't work for them. So if we included the dynamic baffles, the number goes up to about 18 baffles. These are approximates until you get the design in, of course, but that number goes up to about $756,000 for a one-time cost for the baffles. The public user fees would likely need to increase drastically. Now they're $5 per day or $20 per year. And is that chart available? Okay. So if we want to just jump down below for a minute and look at some of these, well, I'm sorry, let's not go there yet. That'll be in the next one. Myself. So that's a one-time cost there. We'd have to have a well-defined user agreement for the non-county law enforcement. Again, an ordinance. Make sure that we can get the rules followed and maintained. And without a reserve safety officers, some safety risks would still exist. The operating budget would pretty much be the same as it is today. The one difference is the baffle systems. Talking with the gentleman that was the range safety officer at the Menominee Range, is they do get shot up a bit, and there is some maintenance on the baffle systems because people do strike them with bullets. That's why they're there. So there would be some maintenance. He didn't really have a number to share, but. Okay, fifth option is the county provide range supervision. At all times, the range is open to the public. So the pros, again, is it would minimize the safety issues. We'd probably have better patron participation with range maintenance and cleanup if they're being monitored. And we have a potential to collect higher revenue because, again, they're monitoring. The cons is without the baffle system in place, there'll still be some safety risk. Well-defined user agreement, again, would have to be put together. To supervise the range, as Mr. Andrews noted, 2 range safety officers would be required, one for each range, one at the long gun and one at the pistol range. And additional county staff time will be required to manage and complete the scheduling response. That could be challenging with this environment with part-time workers. Very, very, very hard to keep staff and then train and maintain. And then increase fees to the public. So now if we wanted to go down below on the screen. I don't know if everybody can see that. I apologize. It's small. So basically, there's 3 options for staffing the range. The first option is 2 range safety officers, which would give us 30 hours per week that the range would be open with 2 officers on. And that would be with the range closed December through March. So the winter months, we would close the range. That's just in this scenario. And if we did that, the daily fees would go from $5 to $15, and the membership fee would go from $20 to $50. And we'd end up with a $55,000 revenue. And we need $61,000 to operate, would be the total budget way in the right. So we'd be a little bit short, but close. And where I got these numbers for the daily fees and the membership fees, I'm just using the number of daily and membership fees from 2020 as a guide and just running the numbers that way. So that was 2 range safety officers with the range open 30 hours a week. The next option we'd have actually 3 part-time range safety officers that would keep the range open 46 hours a week. Again, it would be closed December through March. The daily fee would go from $5 to $20. The annual membership would go from $20 to $75. We'd end up with $77,500 in revenue, and we'd need $67,348 to meet that. So there we'd overachieve a little bit. The third option would be if we had 3 range safety officers, but one was full-time and 2 part-time, That would keep the range open for 63 hours a week. And that would, again, with December through March closed. So the daily fee in this case would go from $5 to $25. The annual membership would go from $20 to $100. We would bring in approximately $100,000 revenue, and the cost to operate in that state would be $112,805. That's the options that we come up with today. Could always do a combination of options as well. But
Rick, how much does the sheriff's department use it these days?
Use it quite a bit. We use it, there's six shoots a year. We do use it for some sniper training on occasion, the long gun side. We use the building quite often for that and other trainings, meetings and things like that. But for the most part, we do the 6 pistol shoots a year.
Are you still doing a lot of tactical stuff out there? Or have you moved up to Chippewa?
No, we had been. Yep. It's pretty much everything we do. Very rarely, unless you're on the bench and shooting just for sight-in purposes. So, but I mean, I think there's, to paint that picture, tactical, like you would know, it's not like we're just running around shooting. Everything is controlled. And when we do that, we have the instructor and the safety officer and one guy going through it at a time. It's not like the guy, everybody's just zipping around and just shooting. And you have the target. So you're going, you got movement. It's not running. It's controlled. It's more of a fast walk, and everything's muzzle control. And you got your and most of the time, very rarely that you shoot while you're moving. It's the time you're moving, stop, shoot, move, stop, shoot.
If I could just respond to that.
Okay.
The sheriff's department, I believe, is the #1 group for reservations at the range. If you looked at the range reservations, I think hunter safety may be the #2 for quantity. So.
The next question was, does the hunters, do they have to shoot? First of all, do they shoot? Secondly, is it required that kids in hunter safety shoot?
I believe, from what I understand, is they only shoot at one of their training sessions. I believe it's the last session, and I believe they only shoot 22s. No high-powered rifles.
Right. Okay.
I think Annette was first, Buck, and then I'll get you. Annette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I was just looking at the cost piece of this, and say, for example, the last thing I want to do is take away something that's a benefit to our law enforcement and to, service to the county, right? However, I do recognize the cost involved, and no matter how you look at it, whether it's doing the berms, doing the people, there's costs involved. But one of the costs I didn't see in here was, coming back to Supervisor Hauser's thing about insurance. Have we looked at that at all, or is that a piece that is missing from here, or is that embedded somehow?
Yeah, so I'm not going to have an exact number for you, but they would obviously take that into account when we do our insurance, our liability insurance, our property insurance. How much that is, I have no idea, but we could probably figure that number out. But they would take that into account because they know what we have in our insurance.
I can fill in the blank on that. There's it's law called the Shooting Range Protection Act. And so if a shooting range is put together according to the NRA standards, your liability is limited to what they would call gross negligence. So, when somebody is doing like we saw here, that has nothing to do with the range design. That's criminal behavior on the individual's part. So the Shooting Range Protection Act is a pretty strong piece of thing. The other thing, the NRA, again, we've kind of left the NRA out of this, but the NRA is one of the big parts behind this. They actually have a policy that if you meet their standards, that we can get. And that's substantially cheaper to cover any of the things that weren't covered in the Shooting Range Protection Act. Yes.
So as we sit now, we're covered under the Shooting Range Protection Act, or do we need the baffles? to be covered.
Well, before I get into all that, Larry, do you have anything else you want to say? I'll let you. Yeah.
Well, I just want to talk before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he's got a question.
Oh.
Are we covered under the Shooting Range Protection Act without baffles, or do we need to have baffles to be covered?
According to the last data information I have, we were covered underneath the Shooting Range Protection Act. The range was actually inspected by Fabian Romero from the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, who managed the Pittman-Robertson program that paid for that. And so at that time, we met the standards. Like anything, we need some repairs, and I think we need to take a look at that. We have different options here, but if we're going to continue the range, we're definitely going to have to do some repairs. And then we'd probably ask to have the inspection again. But what I'm hearing now is NRA is they're contracting with this MT2, aren't they usually? No, NRA, or don't you know that one?
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. All right. Did you have some luck?
Yeah, the question was asked about the police force. There is multitude number of police force units that use that. Every town or city in the county, not everyone, but most of them go out there. The state police does some shooting out there.
DCI.
U.S. Marshals go out there. There's a multitude of different police units use that, not just the sheriff. Want to make that clear.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. I want to thank the Sheriff's Department, staff, and MT2 for the excellent job they did looking into this. I'm going to change my role here because I know more about this range than anyone in the county because I'm the one that got the grants to get it built because our Sheriff's Department had a gravel pit that we're shooting at, and yes, bullets were flying all over. And not only that, at that time period, we had nothing for the hunter education programs. And when we look back at that timeline, in Chippewa County, we were leading the state in hunter education classes and instructors. We had over 50 hunter education instructors. And as the conservation warden for the area, I was contacted to take a look at the possibility of getting a shooting range started somewhere, and so I met with Sheriff Al Dockel. Yeah, okay, that's a long time ago, and asked if they would be interested because the benefit, and at that time, of course, our shooting was different in law enforcement, was static shooting. We weren't doing the tactical stuff. And so we applied for a Pittman-Robertson grant. And so when we look at the options, and option 2, the vast majority of grants that are available, so to give you an idea, back, oh my gosh, in the early 90s when we applied for this, there was $1 million available to us to build a shooting range. That's what they had available for us, $1 million. So when we look at the costs that we have here, still the biggest pot of money available to a county for doing repairs or whatever on a range like this are for the public use funds. So you got the USA Shooting Sports grants, you got the Pittman-Robertson grants, and you got the Friends of the NRA grants. Okay. And those grants we can apply for, and if we qualify, and the last information I had is that the Pittman-Robertson grant program was pretty flush and available. So, if we took a look at that, we could probably get pretty close to 100% of it. And why do I say that? Because when this range was built, the Pittman-Robertson grant paid 50% of the cost of the range as it was provided to us by the county. The Department of Natural Resources then, because of the hunter education issue, had started the hunter education grant, which paid the other 50%. Plus the Friends of the NRA kicked in another $3,000 on top of that. So we actually had more, it was more than 100% of the range was paid for through these programs. So when, going back to the hunter education, we were killing 2-3 people a year in hunting accidents. Many more people injured. We use the law enforcement model of Department of Justice type model of education and information enforcement. And so what we decided that the way that we could reduce these hunting accidents, and so this is something that hasn't been presented by anyone. Hunter education was important. We emphasized it. We got shooting ranges put up all over the country. We actually got one in Cornell that was built for those purposes. I can't tell you how many injuries and lives have been saved. It's tremendous. We go years now without a fatality. I'm here to tell you the hunter education program has worked. And that's a big part of this range. As a matter of fact, it was 50% of the funding. So that's something that we need to consider. I'll give a parallel. In Lake Wissota, when I came to Chippewa County, we were killing a person a year on Lake Wissota. That was our boating fatality rate. Person a year dead on Lake Wissota. I got a letter from the governor saying, how are you going to fix this? Well, welcome to Chippewa County as the new guy, okay? But again, we went back to the same model. Tripled the education effort, and we tripled the enforcement. A lot of what we saw today is because there's been no enforcement. It's something as far as monitoring, I agree completely with our MT2 person. We have to have monitoring, and we have to have some enforcement. After that model where we tripled the education and we tripled the enforcement, we went 9 years without a fatality on Lake Wissota. Then we had one fatality and we went another 10 years without a fatality. It works. It works. So as we contemplate this as a board, cost, we can look at grants. I'll throw you one more example. Marshmallow Lake Dam was in bad need of repairs. They said it's going to cost $500,000 to repair. Put together the people and the organizations. The total cost for repairing and replacing the damage to the Marshmallow Lake Dam was $27,000. We had a young person here. We have people out there that this is near and dear to them. So as we work on this, when we see hard fact numbers, yeah, we can contract out and pay for everything, and we're going to have a big bill, and we may have the grants to pay for it. But on the other hand, a lot of times if you put out the call to the public, they will bring the materials. And in fact, that's what happened on the Marshmallow Lake Dam. Concrete was donated, the rocks, the material was donated, the equipment was donated. The only thing we paid for was gas and oil. So it's what I'm trying to do is put this in a perspective for you. We have a number of options, and all of them are viable options. Don't let the dollar sign scare you. One thing I'm going to ask the deputy, those bullet holes in the top of that steel beam, were those 50 cal?
Hard to tell by the picture, but they were large.
They're large. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's familiar with firearms, but a 50 cal will shoot through steel. The other thing that I wanted to bring forward is if the holes in the shed were 30 caliber, and Mr. Stark, you're 308, the range of that bullet at a 45-degree angle is how many miles?
I don't know, but it'll go farther than that.
About 8 miles. It's about 8 miles. So if you're shooting at an angle like this from where you're supposed to be shooting, you're doing it correctly. This is only 9/10 of a mile. That bullet is still climbing for another 7 miles before it drops to the ground. So I'm impressed with the county because we've taken the right steps. There's an issue. Yes, we can't prove that it's, those bullets came from there, but it is our obligation to make our facility as safe as possible. And with that, I thank you for your time. I'll let the computer time me out. All right. Moving on. We will go to Northern Wisconsin State Fairgrounds. Rusty.
Oh, happy days are here again. Let Terry get this, Tracy get this up. While she's doing that, just so you know, we had one heck of a year at the fairgrounds. It was an awesome fair. I hope you all were able to attend. The weather was perfect. We reached that little bubble where everything seemed to work out really good. So it was really awesome. But what I'm here for today is to give you an idea where we're at with our feasibility study. We were looking at barns, how to replace the barns in the fairgrounds. That's been one of our goals ever since we've really taken over as a nonprofit organization. So what I've got here is show you what we're planning to do as far as changing the barns at the fairgrounds. I bet you something like this is going to work. There we go. This is the area of study that we're working at the fairgrounds. The black area is the property of the fairgrounds, and the center area is where the barns are located. This is what we are planning to build to address the barns. What we have there is over 100 years old. We've lost a couple barns already in the last couple of years with the red barn going down, and somehow we got to replace these things. The reason we got to replace them is I had someone jump me the other day is how can you spend a bunch of money on barns when agriculture is going down? Well, if we don't spend money on youth education and a place for these kids to go to, we're going to lose. We're going to lose big time in agriculture. So these barns are important. The Northern Wisconsin State Fair should not be a tented building. It should be a regional fairgrounds like it was back in the early 1800s or the late 1800s when 27 counties supported this property. So what we're doing is we're building, that red work? We're looking at putting 2 cattle barns, barn 2 and 3, as well as one kind of the center one is the new Coliseum show arena, an animal barn on the far right side there, and a safe room, which is a shower, restroom, concession area, all into one. 2 buildings are going to remain on the fairgrounds on the rural end there, which is the youth exhibit building and the horse barn. This is just a schematic of the size of them buildings. Sorry, it's a little bit small, but it gives you an idea. They're all ag-related buildings except for the shower, restroom, and safe room building. This shows the areas that we worked with to determine where our utilities are going to come from, as well as showing where we're going to be having our showers or our washing. Between barns 2 and 3 is where our cattle washing is going to be. One of the challenges was where does that animal wash go? And we are having valves put in, the DNR approved a valve system. So when we are washing animals, that water will go into sanitation. And when it's not used for animals for washing and stormwater goes through, we can switch it over and put it into our stormwater system, which we now have at the fairgrounds, which is never there before I came on board. So this gives you an idea how that's going to lay out there. One major key factor in this thing is our safe room. We have applied for a FEMA grant through the Chippewa County here, their assistance, and we plan, because we need showers and restrooms and concession areas, these elements at the fairgrounds, we might as well build it to a level where it's going to be a safe room for a storm room. We have people camping up there all the time, so this is designed to house, if a storm comes through, anybody that's at the fair on a Friday night, Saturday night, your 4-H kids, your parents, concessionaires, carnival workers that are all camping up there during that large event. That's a place for them to go. When it's not during the fair, it'll be utilized at all times for a safe room and encompass areas around the fairgrounds. So that trailer park that's a block away, yes, they'll be able to get to this building and have a safe place to go. Otherwise, there's no place when you look at that whole area for people to go to have a safe room. So this is designed for that. The FEMA grant that we did apply for was last year, and I don't know if you're aware, but FEMA denied all grants in Region 5, which is Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, and Illinois. So nobody got any FEMA grants. So while we were denied that, our board decided we still need this size structure, so we're going to still go for it. We are reapplying for that FEMA grant as we speak now. So the next 2 weeks, we're going to be reapplying for it. And thanks to the county for working with us to get that grant started, because we're going to be working through you in order to get that. These are what the buildings are going to look like. All of our buildings, our barns are going to be 16-foot high sidewalls, free span. In other words, no poles are built in the middle, so we can utilize them for everything else. Doorways are 14 by 14 foot wide. You can see the top. We want air movement so that we can keep the most efficient way of keeping animals cool and air movements. This is a look down the from the exhibit hall. The pavement will be 40 feet wide, as it is in some of the other areas, so that we have ample space for people to move in and out. The fair this past year was over 100,000 people, just to give you an idea. And if you were there, you know it was fun. This is our main building. It's our showroom. It's our Coliseum. That's going to be replaced with what we had was the Red Barn. This is going to be a year-round building, HVAC, air conditioned, heating, of course, acoustically sound. That's one of the big things I'm pushing, that when you get in there, you can hear. It'll be used year-round. You've got 8,000 square feet in this particular building. Notice the top. We want to build it like the old Red Barn was, with windows around the outside so that you have natural air or natural lighting coming into this building. And again, 16-foot high. This is going to be a show building. This needs to be a show building. It needs to be set aside of everybody else. I also can report to the county tonight that that building has already been purchased. I had a donor come up and said, I will give you $1.2 million to build that for you to get this campaign started. So that's already been done. So when you look at the dollar numbers of what this is going to be, know that within the last couple of weeks that I've started this thing, we've had people step up to the plate. I visited with our foundations, and the foundations are going to support it all the way across our region. But the question they had is, what's the agricultural community going to give? And a gentleman stood up and said, we need youth education. And that's what we're going to create in this building. So that is already paid for. Next building is kind of our youth building, or not our youth building, but an animal building. Again, that's 12,000 square feet. That can be used for all types of things. You can see where advertising is going to be, donor boards are going to be, etc. It's just another concept. This shows the showers, restroom. The showers are going to have doors on the outside. So they can be closed, they can be locked, they can be safe, especially when we have camping groups and some of them elements there. This last week, we had about over 90 campers there, or RVs there, in a rally that were here for over a week. And so they spent a lot of money in this community in that particular week. We had to bring in showers for them because we don't have anything on. So this is going to help a lot of areas. This is another view of how it's going to look from looking down from, shall we say, the grandstand down towards that particular area. Projected cost of this project is $5.2 million. Now, there's 4 barns, and keep that in mind. There's 4 barns here. And these barns are all, the whole area is going to be cemented out. The barns are all going to have 4-foot high sidewalls, so that when we're done with it, we can go in and clean them, sanitize them, and get ready for the next group that's going to use them. And we'll have lots of use. So barns 2 and 3, the cattle barns, that they're going to be multi-purpose cattle barns. Show barns, $1.2 million. That's already been taken care of. The small animal structure or the other animal barns, $1 million. The restrooms alone is $1.35 million. That's an expensive restroom, but it's designed by FEMA standards. That's why it's so expensive in that regard. Now, we still need to build that. If we are successful, and all indications are, if FEMA does provide grants for this area, we're about 95% likelihood that we're going to get this grant, which is $670,000 from FEMA. That grant also helps pay for the infrastructure going into the structures. So if we can get the grant, we're down to $4.5 million in this project. The projected annual revenues for this thing, non-fair. Now, the fair is one thing that we operate, and it's going to be used a lot during the fair because we can stretch it out, get more programming in there. But for non-fair, I was a farmer. I built barns for myself, but that was so that my animals could give more milk and I could have more animals on the farm. Now we're building barns so others have the opportunity to generate revenues, and so that we can educate people on what's going to happen with agriculture in the future. That's what's important. So it's hard to put a P&L together on barns in that regards, but we are going to make money on this thing non-fair. As you can see, we can have all kinds of extra animal shows during the year. Alpaca, goats, sheep, sanctioned shows all around. We've been getting calls every year. Can we have another show there besides the fair? Yes, we can do that, but we can't do it with the facilities we currently have. Non-animal events, when it's not the fair, the Coliseum will be used year-round for weddings, banquets, meetings, shows, you name it. It's going to be used in that regards. Your Barn 5, the 12,000 square foot facility, I get 3 calls a year to have circuses here, wrestling matches, and all kinds of other sporting things that happen in Chippewa Falls. We can bring that stuff if we have buildings to do so. Additional winter storage we can have for these particular barns, as well as lots of advertising. If you know me, you're going to get advertising up there because that's going to help with the maintenance and everything going on. So we show a revenue stream of $88,700 for this project. Expenses over the top of what we currently have consist of $56,700. Now that's most of it, as you can see, is extra wages for cleaning and maintenance and workers in that thing. Currently, we spend over $6,000 just for tents for the fair. We can eliminate that because we have enough space now for all of our animals without putting any additional tents up. Our solicitation timeline, right now I'm out talking to foundations and those people that have the capacity to give big gifts. That's going to happen. I'm here today to listen to you, talk to you guys. I would like some help from the county too. We do a lot of, shall we say, we work together a lot, and you'll see why here in a little bit. So I'm talking to the Department of Agriculture, WEDC. We're looking at FEMA, all types of ways to get grants. Agribusinesses have stepped forward. Yes, they're going to help. They're all going to help in a certain manner. The fair touches a lot of people. We're going to allow everybody to give to this project so that they can have ownership into this whole project. We are not going to begin this project until we have sufficient funds to secure the project to make sure it's done. I'm not going to start something unless we know we're going to be able to fund it. And remember, all funds are tax deductible because we are a 501c3. Donor levels. These are the donor levels from $1,000 all the way up to $1.25 million for the major barns. You purchase a barn, your name is on there for as long as that barn stays on the property. If you want one of the lower ones, talk to me. We'll figure it out. Actually, will be recognized. Every donor will be recognized if they give $50 or whatever. We'll have areas for them, all them donors to give. And any additional funds we raise from this campaign will go towards fixing up the youth building as well as the 4-H, as well as the horse barn down there. They both need some help. So, but first we got to get our barns because the operations will take care of that. With strong support, we'll be able to get this project done. I got a very aggressive timeline because if you go through this, the fair is going to look different this next year as long as I can keep my funds coming in right now for funding raising. We don't know what it's going to look like. Some of them barns, we got barns, old barns down there that I hope they make it through the winter because the foundations are like this already. But we might have to take them down and have more tents this next year. But the goal is so that we're all ready by 2023 for our 125th anniversary. That's my goal, to get everything done by that particular time. Okay? I put this slide in there so you can see what type of events we have besides the fair. This does not include the fair now. We operate from April through the end of October. There's 214 days in that area. We have 15 multi-day events. Those 15 multi-day events take up 53 total days. We have 23 single-day events. County extension agent, you guys use the grounds 28 days out of the year. The city uses it 25. The school system uses it 31. Clubs and groups have meetings up there all the time. If you ever go through, there's always something going on at the fairgrounds. Okay, so then you have to have event setup days. Days before the event that have to set up and tear down. So we have a whole total of 220 days out of 214. So there's something going on all the time. That does not include the fair. The fair takes 4 weeks to put on, 2 weeks to get ready, a week to run, and a week to clean up afterwards. So the fair takes a lot of time. So that's where we're sitting with this project. We're moving forward. Financially, we are in relatively decent shape. I need to inform you that we did not receive any COVID monies from 2020 at all, whether it was from the CARES Act, whether it was from the Shuttered Venue Operators Act, or anything. Because in the CARES Act, all fairgrounds in the state of Wisconsin were considered underneath the county. So no fairgrounds in the state of Wisconsin got any money. Not even us that are private. I finally got them to understand that we are non-governmental. nonprofit organization, which now has been incorporated into the latest event act that they got right now that they just put out. There's an event, I forget what they call it, but I just applied for it so we can get some extra funds. As far as federal is concerned, the shuttered venue operators event that they had, that was a major one that we should have gotten monies for. However, we were disqualified because we hosted an agricultural fair. Can you believe that? And I had to work that through the International Association of Fairs and through Tammy Baldwin's office to get them to understand that this agricultural fair that we run is not the major thing that we do. We got an event, we got a major event facility. It's not just the fair, because you can see all the events that we have. So we're working through them, but know that we're still going to survive. We have been very frugal, and believe it or not, we did very well during the fair, so that really helps a lot. Questions? My time's up. One last thing. I would really like the county to consider helping us with that safe room. Okay? I feel that's something that's part of the county that the county can help us with as far as any potential funding. So if there's any extra ARP money that you're looking to do something with, I would sure be open to listening to you about that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We'll move on to business items. Resolution to proclaim October 2021 as Manufacturer of the Month in Chippewa County. And I will have, you want her to read it first, Randy, or do you want to start? Okay, she's going to read it for her.
Resolution number 40-21, resolution to proclaim October 2021 as Manufacturing Month in Chippewa County. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim October 2021 as Manufacturing Month in Chippewa County. And be it further resolved that the county board urges all citizens of Chippewa County to join in recognizing the value of our manufacturers and the important role they serve in our community. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay. We need a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
In second. Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
All right. Charlie Walker is here tonight from Economic Development. He was not able to attend the executive committee meeting. So we appreciate you being here, Charlie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, County Board. October, of course, is an important month for manufacturing. As you know, manufacturing is 21% of our economy. And the purpose of Manufacturing Month is to highlight the work of manufacturers, but more importantly, to energize a future pipeline of our workers and our kids who want to go into those skills and those jobs. It's basically it's an annual thing that we try to do, recognizing the month of October every year. It occurs primarily because the manufacturers need the publicity to try to get the stigma of the old manufacturing. The manufacturing is not dirty, dangerous, and dumb. So we've been on a campaign. We're on like the 4th year of educating the young that there are good careers in manufacturing and that it is really changing. And by celebrating Manufacturing Month, this resolution is a start of it. So mark your calendars on October 19th because Mr. Thornton, I know, has been dying to invite you to the Chippewa Valley Innovation Center. It's an open house, but what you don't know, it's also a free lunch. So come join us for a free lunch and see about what some of our manufacturing startups are doing. We're also running some campaign. You're going to hear some radio ads, some podcasts, some lunch and learns. But on October 28th, we're having a trick-or-treat job fair. This will be the last chance of basically before cold winter gets in to get the manufacturers together to let them know that there are jobs available for immediate hiring and to get the kids out to trick-or-treat, get some candy, and have the parents be talking about the job opportunities. That's going to be at the Avalon from 2 to 6. You're going to start hearing about that. We already have 25 companies that are ready to hire on the spot. it's moving to the trick or treat. We're going to put a limit on it for safety. There's also, as you know, the Avalon has that outside pavilion too. So we are practicing social distancing and limiting how that's going to work. But we hope we can get folks in there to walk around the outdoor perimeter and get some candy and stuff like that. But thank you for your support for economic development and manufacturing. I have any questions, I'm sure you don't, because you hear about how great manufacturing and agriculture is. Agriculture's number 2. Number 2.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions? Thank
you again.
Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I guess we'll do the vote. Okay, so use your buttons to do your vote. Those in favor? And those opposed? Okay, clerk.
14 yes, 0.
All righty. Resolution 4121.
Resolution number 41-21, resolution to create a full-time criminal justice services specialist case manager position in the Criminal Justice Services Division of the Department of Administration. Now therefore be it resolved that effective January 1, 2022, a full-time CJS specialist position is created in the CJS Division of the Department of Administration to focus on pretrial monitoring, assessment, drug testing, and evidence-based programming for all CJS participants. And be it further resolved that this position shall be funded by using a combination of state and levy funding that is being used to fund the current contracted position. And be it further resolved that the CJS division shall allocate the necessary funding from state and levy funding sources to permanently fund this position. But should future funding allocations not be sufficient to generate enough state and levy funds to fully fund the position, this CJS specialist position may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Sir. As Rose is making her way up here, I'll just say a few words. As I reported last time, this was going to be included if our shared revenue numbers came in where we expected, and they did. They came in a little better than what we expected. And this has been a long time goal to get this department secured, I guess. The best way to say it's sustainable. One of the last contracts we had with Lutheran Social Services was this position. So this would bring this position on as a full-time employee to the county. I'll let Rose talk about the rest.
I think I met most of you all, but for those of you I haven't, I'm Rose Beyer. I'm the Criminal Justice Service Director. So I oversee our recovery court, front-end intervention treatment, all things diversion programs. And I run the Take a Stand Against Meth campaign, which has become quite busy lately. So I appreciate, first I have to say I appreciate all of what you do here, sitting here tonight, listening to this. So I really do appreciate what you do. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more information on what's entailed in this position. It has been contracted, so it's not like it's a new position where they would have new job requirements or duties. So they've been contracted since about 2017 with LSS. The main roles we've outlined in the resolution for you, but it is very vital to what we do in criminal justice services. He completes, the person that's in there now, Dave Johnson, completes all of my compass assessments, which are required for every program that we run, recovery court, fit programs, things like that. It's a risk assessment. He facilitates all my evidence-based programs in the division for the groups, which is also important. He does our random drug testing, observed drug testing and random drug testing. And we're also a pretrial pilot with the state of Wisconsin. We're one of 6 counties that's been fortunate enough to serve as a pilot. And this position also, about 20 hours a week, is a pretrial specialist for me, does PSA assessments at the jail and gives court information to help make determinations on release decisions into the community. Just to give you a bit of an idea, we are monitoring about 279 people right now out on pretrial monitoring, and this position is responsible for about 120 of those individuals for pretrial. TAD funds do cover about 20 hours a week. That's our treatment and diversion grant funds. They've been around for almost as long as I have, 18 years. Have been around a little longer. So I'm hoping those will continue. The state only continues to increase those funds every year. I think the vital part about getting this contracted position into the county position is the sustainability and the succession planning piece. At this point, I can't really directly direct work for that position. It goes through Lutheran Social Services. So not only for backup succession planning, like Randy mentioned, for sustainability purposes, we're asking for this position to become a county position.
Any questions? Okay. No questions? Okay. Annette.
Just a quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. TAD grant money, is that federal or is that state, or where does that come from?
That's state money.
That's state?
Yep, Department of Justice.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Our actual total TAD funds support our other TAD fit case manager, and then only 20 hours of this case manager. So it's about $115,000 total.
And only about 27?
Yep, about 27, almost 28,000 for this position.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we will call the vote. Those in favor, go ahead and push your button. And those opposed, push your other button. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, resolution 42-21.
Resolution 42-21, resolution to commit to expansion of County Highway T corridor and acceptance of raised grant funding. Now therefore be it resolved that the Chippewa County Board of Supervisors recognizes the need for and economic benefit of a future 4-lane expansion of the County Highway T corridor. And be it further resolved that once the corridor mapping and layout plan has been completed, the Chippewa County Board shall adopt the official corridor plat map. And be it further resolved that should the raised grant application be successful as submitted, Chippewa County will accept the raised grant funds and enter into the necessary agreements to proceed with design, property acquisition, and construction of the County Highway T corridor. And be it further resolved that should the raised grant application be successful, the county administrator and highway commissioner are authorized to sign future agreements necessary to proceed with design, property acquisition, and construction of the County Highway T corridor. And be it further resolved that should the raised grant application be successful as submitted, the county will allocate funds for the county's local share of costs, which is currently estimated to be $2,804,303. And be it further resolved that should additional state or federal funding become available to use on the project, such funds may be utilized for the project in lieu of county funds to fulfill the county's obligation of the raised grant program. Forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion made and seconded, and we'll go discussion.
Thank you. Brian Kelly, our highway commissioner, will come up and give some more detail, but he gave a presentation, as you're aware, last month, so he'll just give a brief overview on this part.
Good evening. So as we talked about in September, there's a growing need for transportation improvements out on Highway T between 29 and the North Crossing. So the stakeholders that became involved in this are Chippewa County, Eau Claire County, the city of Eau Claire, and the towns of Union and Wheaton. We wrote the resolution in a manner that spells out the issues and also explains the work that's already been done and describes the next steps if we're going to get to an eventual construction project. So in this resolution, anytime we're talking about a plan, we're referring to the corridor mapping and layout plan. The resolution talks about reasons for the plan and benefits of completing it. It talks about the 2 well-attended public information meetings we had out there. We got a lot of good, important feedback from residents and businesses in the area. So the desired outcome will be to record the plan, and that will help ensure that future development along the corridor corresponds with our future transportation needs. Then the resolution next talks about a project, and that's referring to the design, property acquisition, and construction for a 4-lane expansion. The resolution talks about a current funding application that's been submitted to the U.S. Department of Transportation for a RAISE grant program, and that's for $25 million for this project. Currently, as Jackie said, we estimate our share to be about $2.8 million under that program. So sometime in about the next month or so, we expect US DOT to make a decision on the County T Corridor funding application. And then we felt it was important at this time to get the board on board with that plan so we don't make an announcement that we received $25 million and then opt to not accept it later. So that's kind of what we're here tonight, is making sure we have board support to continue on forward. And hopefully the next time I'm here, we're talking about a successful grant application and moving on to construction.
Any questions? Yes, Supervisor Hauser.
It talks about successful grant application. What are the contingencies for the unsuccessful?
Well, we only started this to create the plan. The grant application came along in the process. We really were just getting concerned with the amount of development out there that we're going to start seeing driveway for commercial developments popping up every 300 feet. And we knew that we had to do something. And was talking to the some of the stakeholders that had experience in this, that was the route we chose, was the plan. But we'll keep going back after grant applications. I'm sure there's going to be more opportunities with stimulus, different funds that are coming up. The transportation reauthorization bill is looking like it's going to be pretty big. So we're hoping that even if the RAISE grant isn't successful, one of these next few programs will be. But if it comes to a program that's 50-50 or something that's not even anywhere close to 80-20, we're not asking for permission to pledge $10 million or anything like that. We're just asking for something along the lines of an 80-20 that we want to be able to pledge $2 or $3 million.
Supervisor Schmidt.
It was about 10 years ago I sat here and Bruce Stelzner was up there with Frank Pascarella. And at that time we were 42, 43 years on a replacement schedule for our county roads. Randy stood there this spring and we're at 52, 53 years now. I went to two municipalities in the past week. One of them, before I ever said anything, nailed me on the condition of county roads in this county. And I brought this up at both municipalities, and nobody in the room was in favor of this, but they all want their county roads fixed. A, double D, C, the north end of T, N and M were brought up, and I probably forgot a couple. That, to those people and my constituents in the north end of this county, is a priority. This is not. This is 3 miles of some of the best county road we have in the county. And we're going to spend $3 million on it, and we're driving on roads up north that aren't fit to drive on with a tractor. My hayfields are smoother than those roads. Until there's a plan in place to do something about that, we have no business approving this.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, then we will call the vote. Those in favor, again, press yes. Opposed, press no.
Yes, 2 no.
Okay. Ready? Oops.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, resolution 4321.
Resolution 43-21, resolution to create 3 social worker positions in the Department of Human Services to provide comprehensive community services to children. Now therefore be it resolved that effective upon passage of this resolution, 3 full-time social worker positions are hereby created in the Recovery and Wellness Consortium of the Department of Human Services to eliminate the wait list and serve consumers as they become eligible. And be it further resolved that these positions shall be funded by using the Medicaid revenue generated by these positions, as well as the CCS reconciliation process. And be it further resolved that commencing in 2021, the Department of Human Services shall utilize the Medicaid revenue from state and federal funding sources to permanently fund these positions. And be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund these positions no longer be available or be reduced significantly, these positions may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process, forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion.
Thank you. I got Tim Iska here, the director of DHS, and a couple of his staff. They're actually going to do a presentation that's going to relate to this resolution and the next, just so you're aware. Go ahead, Tim.
Sorry. Good evening. Yeah, we thought it'd be a good idea to talk a little bit about what is CCS, why are we coming with 3 positions, what is children's long-term support, how are they funded, and the importance of them. So Kyra Seacrow is our manager of our Children with Different Abilities Division, which handles these 2 programs. And Rachel Lettner is our lead worker, who has recently been promoted to supervisor of the same division to give Kyra a hand in these duties. So take it away.
All right. So with a lot of things in our agency, there's a lot of acronyms. So just wanted to familiarize you guys with the acronyms you're going to be seeing in this presentation. We are the Children with Differing Abilities Unit, so that's CWDA. Comprehensive Community Services is referred to as CCS, and Children's Long-Term Support Waiver is CLTS. So some program information about Comprehensive Community Services, CCS. It is a voluntary program. The individuals that are eligible for this program have mental health diagnoses or substance use disorders. There's an array of services that they can receive while on this program. But in order to get those services, there must be an assessed need, and they must be clinically eligible to receive that service. These services and this program is fully funded through Medicaid. Children's Long-Term Support Waiver. This is also a voluntary program. That are eligible for this program have developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, or severe emotional disturbances. There's also an array of services associated with this program. And in order to get the services, there must be an assessed need for those services as well. And this is also fully funded through Medicaid. I was asked to differentiate between another acronym in Human Services, which is Child Protective Services. It really doesn't have anything to do with CCS or CLTS. But Child Protective Services is a mandated services. That is where we assess abuse or neglect if it's occurred with children. And it's focusing on the safety of children and keeping those kids in the home if possible. If that isn't possible, it may be necessary to place those kids in out-of-home care. And it is funded heavily by local and state dollars. So a brief history with these 2 programs. In 2019, the county board approved 2 CCS positions, 1 for children, 1 for adults, as well as 1 CLTS position in January of 2020. For CCS in 2019, the Western Region Recovery and Wellness Consortium was cited for having a wait list. For CLTS, in August of 2020, the state mandated waitlist elimination by November of 2020. So staff in the Children with Differing Abilities Unit took on additional workload to meet these requirements and to come into compliance. So just wanted to discuss some cost benefit with both of these programs. They're fully funded positions, no levy is used. CLTS waiver covers a portion of foster care payments for CPS and youth justice placements. Currently, there are 8 kids that are in foster care, and they're covering $4,024 per month for those 8 kids. In the past 24 months, there's approximately 10 kids that we've prevented out-of-home placement for, which I think is a huge feat. Of the 16 kids that we currently have in out-of-home care through the Youth Justice Unit, CCS delayed placement of 7 kids for 141 months, with a current average cost of $8,830 per month. So this slide is kind of a starting point for us, as there's no good way of identifying on this day this kid needed out-of-home placement or residential level of care, because we're really focused on dealing with the day-to-day issues of the behaviors, the crises that are going on, the support that the parents, the schools, and law enforcement are looking for from us. There's also a strong partnership between our youth justice workers and the CCS workers to keep these kids in the home successfully or for as long as possible. So this chart is the worst case scenario, because not all kids are looking at placement the moment they start receiving CCS services. So Rachel's going to talk about what the chart means.
So, like Kyra said, this is worst case scenario. However, if you look at child number 1, they came to our door a total of 66 months ago. 60 months they were involved in CCS services, which was fully funded. After those 60 months, though, that child did end up in placement. So they've been placed for 6 months. Their placement cost is $16,275 per month. So what this chart shows you is that in those 60 months where we had them involved in services and in the home, we were able to save approximately $976,000 without having to place her during that time.
And I just want to give a little synopsis of child number 4 up there. Special needs adoption, and just quickly what that means is that she was adopted through the CPS and foster care system. Her parents came to our doors saying that she wasn't a good fit for their family. They didn't want to have her in their home anymore, and they were seeking placement of her. We, of course, pushed back to try to keep this family intact by opening them up through CCS, providing services, everything from family therapy to mentoring and other services that are available through CCS. We also opened her up to youth justice to try to get parents to follow through with services. But at the end of the day, when it came down to it, the parents weren't engaging and we couldn't get them to accept her and welcome her back into the family. So instead of creating more trauma and mental health trauma for her, she ended up being placed out of the home. So this slide, what this is showing you is the rate at which we were opening new clients during the time frame of July 2020 to July 21, and it shows our ultimate growth. It doesn't show that we were at 0 clients. It shows that we were opening at a really low rate per month prior to July. We were probably opening between 0 and 4 kids at a time. But going back a few slides where I spoke about where the state kind of put the hammer down that you have to eliminate the wait list, you'll see between September and December there's the huge spike in enrollments. That's where the staff really got down and got a lot of kids enrolled, so we could come into compliance with that. and get rid of the wait list. So referral information. So right now we work with public health. We have a contract with them to do our screening to find out if kids are eligible for these programs. That's our single point of entry. Prior to COVID, our referrals averaged 4 to 5 per month. Since the initial wave of COVID and things kind of got back to normal somewhat, we're averaging between 8 and 15 referrals per month, and that's what the chart is showing you below. 96% of those referrals were followed through with and opened. And if we aren't able to do anything with those, we're trending to have 120 kids on the wait list by July of 2022. If you want to go back to that slide. I just want to point out that August, because when we made this slide, it only went from July to July, or through July. August and September did follow the same trends. In August, there was 8. In September, we had 14 total referrals to go at that time. For the wait list, we did have some good news. We were 100% wait list free from March through June of 2021. The wait list did resume in July of 21 due to our capacity limit. At the time that we made this PowerPoint, those waiting to be screened at the single point of entry, it was 18. Today's number is 22. Our current wait list numbers as of the time that the screen was made was 15 for CCS, which is the blue line, and 8 for CLTS. Today's numbers, CCS is at 22, CLTS is at 12. Staff capacity. So the CWDA staff are already at capacity with their caseloads. The year-to-date productivity average that we measure is at 95 hours. The expectation is 90. There are 115 cases open in CCS. We have 6 full-time staff currently that have CCS cases. In CLTS, we have 135 cases open with 2.5 staff, which includes the 0.5 lead worker position, which is Rachel here, who will continue to have 0.5 of a caseload. The lead worker currently has 42 cases. She should have 25. This takes away from her lead worker duties, technical assistance, quality assurance, and support to all the CWDA staff. This chart shows our current staff, their caseloads, and if we had the 3 new staff in CCS and how we could disperse those cases and absorb the wait list. So the orange, the 24 cases in orange are over capacity for our current staff. We can move those 24 cases over to the gray for the 3 new staff, and then absorb the 15 cases that were originally on the old wait list number. Obviously, with the wait list growing, we can absorb some more of those wait list numbers. With CLTS, that's kind of the same situation. To get the lead worker down to 25 cases, we could take away 17, take away 10 from each of the 2 existing full-time waiver workers, give them to the new CLTS staff, and that person would have 37 cases, and we'd still be able to absorb some of the existing wait list. So we are requesting 1 CLTS staff, 3 CCS staff in the children with different abilities unit. We have enough cases today to hand over full caseloads to all the requested positions. And if current trends continue, we anticipate the need for additional staff in 2022. That's all. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will then take the vote. Those wishing to vote yes, the green button, those the red one.
Yes, and 1 abstain.
Okay. Resolution 4421.
Resolution number 44-21, resolution to create one full-time social worker position in the Department of Human Services to provide children's long-term support services. Now therefore be it resolved that effective upon passage of this resolution, one full-time social worker position is hereby created in the Children, Youth, and Families Division, Children with Differing Abilities Unit of the Department of Human Services to work to eliminate the CLTS program waitlist and serve consumers as they become eligible. And be it further resolved that this position shall be initially funded by Medicaid revenue generated by this position. And be it further resolved that commencing in 2021, the Department of Human Services shall utilize the Medicaid revenue from state and federal funding sources to permanently fund these positions. And be it further resolved that should the state and federal funding necessary to fund this position no longer be available or be reduced significantly, this position may be eliminated by the county administrator through the budget process, forwarded to the county board by the executive committee.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Yeah, really nothing to add. This was part of the presentation, so unless you have questions for Tim or myself.
Any questions for Tim? Tim, I have one. I look at this revolving door on the state level somewhere. We've got to figure out how to fix this problem because it's 3 positions and then 4 positions. 2 years from now, we're going to probably be behind the 8 ball again.
You know, we're actually looking at that. We have a supervisor from St. Croix County that developed a rubric, try and take a look at the number of kids. We're going to try and it's just an estimation. Because what we know is that these families have to be on Medicaid, number one, because there's a whole pile of families that are working with their children. And we're going to serve these kids one way or the other. They're going to come through crisis, and we're going to be spending local, we're going to be spending levy money, we're going to be spending that kind of funding for this. The good thing of this is, and that's what I look at it, this program is kind of a godsend that we're able to utilize Medicaid funding to work with these kids. Are we going to reach a saturation point eventually? Yes, because the kids are turning 18. Some are able to take on their recovery on their own. This isn't meant to be a long-term support program, but that's what happens with kids, with parents, as they're especially kids that are experiencing mental illness for the first time, and the parents, they're trying to work, and by the time they get comfortable, a lot of times they'll end up into the adult CCS world. But we do see adults discharging from the program on a fairly regular basis. That's why we're not coming for the adult programs at this point. But yeah, you're right. So we're going to try and take a look at that, try and determine what are we looking at potentially for worst case scenario, because we're seeing this, everybody across the consortium is talking about that, because we're just wondering, holy cow, every time, we turn around, there's more cases. But at the same time, I say, holy cow, we've got this program to serve these kids.
Yeah, and especially with the news report out about the Medicaid funds running short, probably within the next 4 or 5 years. And, so there's our funding source. So, yeah, it's, my hat goes off to you and your staff. It's almost an impossible situation, and you're making the best of it. Thank you.
We do have good stories. I just ended up shipping one to Randy the other day. Kids do recover, kids do well, they graduate from high school, they go on to live some really rich, full lives like adults. Mental illness isn't just a death sentence. You know, people are able to live with that and become really productive members of society. And we don't know what one of these kids are going to grow up to be someday. That's the thing we don't know. They could be that doctor that's performing heart surgery on me someday. So I want all of them that we can to be there. But I mean, it is. I understand what you're saying, Chair, for sure. But this is a good program.
You keep saying permanent finances. You're depending on Medicaid. Is that what you're saying? Most of the time, the positions before that also said permanent income. Is that Medicaid that you're talking about?
I don't know if I'm following the question.
How is this funded?
This is going to be funded through Medicaid. These 4 positions. Yes. Yep, all the CCS, all the CLTS are Medicaid-funded positions. CPS, Child Protective Services, Youth Justice, those are all through our various funding streams, including levy.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing none, then we'll call for the vote on Resolution 44. Yep, should be okay. I was just going to say, we will go. Okay. We have the computer ready. We can now push our buttons. Yes to approve, no to approve.
13 yes, 1 abstain.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Resolution 4521, and we will let the clerk read this by title because it is rather lengthy.
Resolution number 45-21, resolution to establish the 2022 health insurance employee premiums, plan design, and estimated employer total cost of the health insurance plan.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I have to make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
A second. Go ahead.
Motion made and seconded.
Miguel.
We had a tie.
Was it Ron?
Ron? Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Lots of people seconding.
Tony Holfeller, our HR director, is going to end the night on some good news. So we like good news at the end of the night.
All right, first I have a 30-minute PowerPoint presentation to provide.
Only 30.
We will take a break.
All right, so this is a resolution. It is great news. We have been updating you on our transition from a fully insured health plan to a self-funded health plan, and we have the premiums. And our goal was to get, or our budgeted amount was 3%. We were able to get it at 0. So we're not going to have an increase in premiums from the county level. So really what we illustrated here in the resolution, the requirement was to bring it back to the county board in October after we got all of the numbers in. And so the first page there illustrates the 2021 plan, the deductible, it's a 2-tiered plan because we had 2 different networks. There's a Premier plan and then an Explorer plan, which is an extended network. And then it has the out-of-pocket maximum of $5,000 and $10,000, and then it illustrates the single and family plan for both of those. And you'll see the total cost, and then the 0 contribution for employees, and then of course the county picking up the remainder. The second page of the resolution will show you the 2022 plan. So it's still the same deductible. So it's a $20,000, $4,000 family deductible, the same out-of-pocket maximum of $5,000, $10,000. The one difference is we now have an out-of-network plan. And so when we had the previous plan or the current one that we're under in 2021, it's either Explore or Premier. And there is no out-of-network coverage at all. So while this looks a little scary when you see a $4,000, $8,000 deductible for out-of-network or a $10,000, $20,000 out-of-pocket max, that was non-existent with the previous. It just gives an extra layer of protection if someone is out-of-network. But what we're transitioning to is Security Health Plan, to Maribel, which is a network with Anthem. It's a very inclusive network, so it includes all of the same providers. I've been getting employee questions as we've announced this, and every provider that other people have kind of thrown out there that we didn't have in this list have all still been in network. So we haven't found any just yet that haven't converted. Then you'll see there the single premium is the same, and the family premium is the same. And then just below that, for anyone who's interested, is be it further resolved that the estimated total cost was calculated as it follows there in lines 51 through 56. So it does illustrate and define there for you how the premiums were calculated. And this is in conjunction with working with our consultant from Hayes Companies. They helped us be able to come up with this. As you know, I think you know from our presentation, the self-funded premium is an estimate. So it's based, because a bulk of that is based on claims. So this total cost, we'll know obviously better next year. And each year we do this, we'll be able to better estimate what those premiums are. Any questions?
Questions from the board? Okay. Hearing none, are we ready? Yep. Okay. We will then call the vote. Those in favor, press yes. Those opposed, no. Hey. Agenda items for future consideration. Ron.
Would it be possible for the highway department to give the board a sustainability report on the county highway system, kind of in regards to Supervisor Smith's comments, maybe some type of projected budget for this sustainability in the future? A long-term type of a plan or proposed plan, or what their thoughts are.
Right. Supervisor Steele.
Yeah, the news lately is the groundwater for Eau Claire is really taking a hit. They closed down, 7 wells, I think? And those wells are all out at the airport, very close to the boundary line. And also, we are participating in the airport itself. So, I don't know if I'd like to have a little report on what we can do or how much liability we could have, we might be looking at, and all kinds of stuff.
All right. You must have been reading our minds. They sat down with Dan, and we're going to have in the LCFM for this month. We're going to have on the water testing. You're shaking your head.
Can't talk.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. But
put it on somewhere. And
we'll have it though. Anything else? Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hell no.
We are adjourned. 13-1.